Hello everyone, Melissa Aiken, and I'm just gonna share a journey that I've been on for the last few years. And it's kind of one of those taboo topics that no one really talk about, whether you're saved or not saved, and it's regarding immigration. So I'm gonna share a journey which I call life as an immigrant in the UK, and how the Lord has just turned everything around in my favor. So for those who don't know, well, I came to the UK since 2014, and I really came on the basis that I was married to my husband. We had a child in Jamaica, and we decided that we're just gonna come together as a family. And upon coming into the UK, my plan wasn't necessarily to live here full time, but I would see how it goes, and then I would have decided what I would have done. When I came, as probably some of you may or may not know, the immigration rules change every year. So when I came in the country, I had this visa that I entered the country on. And upon arrival, about 2 months later, I found out that the rules that applied to that particular visa, which was called a visitor's visa at the time, it would not allow me to stay in the country as I had planned to. So, anyways, I decided to do some research, and everything else I'm going to say from this point is just all glory belongs to God. There's nothing I knew, understand, anything at all regarding immigration law whatsoever. So, everything I say from this point is all glory belongs to God. So, I started doing some research, which it must have been the Lord who was opening up my understanding. And to my surprise, I found out that there was this place at the time in Croydon that, well, called the Home Office, that you're able to come and get advice. So I decided to go there, went to the Home Office, and began to share my story with her, what was going on and what were different possibilities of me staying in the country or going back and so forth. But out of the blue, as I just randomly mentioned that, oh, my dad was British. And the fact that I said to her, my dad was British, she was like, really? And she said, yes. And she said, okay, then here is this number. Call the British nationality team. I'm assure you that there's a strong possibility that you can get your British citizen in the country, citizenship. I said, okay. And she said, if you don't hear from them, send them an email. So at this point, this would have been about December 2014, and I had about a few months left on my visa. And so I went home, called them, and trying to get all the necessary information. Unfortunately, they told me that, well, I'm sorry to tell you that because your mom and dad wasn't married, you can't automatically claim any form of citizenship. And so therefore you could not go that route. So I said to her, well, what would have been the requirements if my mom and dad were married? And she said, well, she started giving me a list of things I've never heard in my entire life. So I took the information as if she told me that it was possible. And when I came off the phone, I said, well, God wrote the law, so God can change the law in my favor. And I started to do some research, but unfortunately, my dad died like 20 years ago. So there was no much, I couldn't say, okay, dad, this is what's needed. So I had to contact my siblings that lived here, and no one had much information, not even his date of birth. No one had the accurate information. So I said, well, this is literally starting from scratch. And there were some specific documents that I had to have, and I had no clue where to get them from. And I remember this was like around the January, and I started to go on ancestry.co.uk. So a lot of people see that advertise and think it's rubbish, but it's actually quite good. So I went on ancestry.co.uk, and I put a little information that I had about my dad, and I mean, hundreds of people with the exact same name. I'm like, okay, then who do I know is my dad? And I had to, it's like God just popped my eyes open. I had to lose some like simple little things to put the pieces of puzzle together. It took me months to actually figure out my father's correct date of birth, his correct full name, and I found where my dad used to live, where he voted, and stuff like that. And I said, wow. So anyways, there was this one particular document that I needed, which was called naturalization certificate. And no one knew where I could get that. So I just started searching online, and out of the blues again, like everything was just popping up. This thing called National Archives. So yes, people, there is places that you can get information from people who have died from very, very, very long time, as we'd say in Jamaica, from Wapikil Philly. And When I went on there, I said, let me just try this thing. And I put my dad's details in and sent it off. They said within 24 hours you get a response. And after I think it was the following day, I got an email from them and they were saying, I'm really sorry to say that, but unfortunately, we can't find a naturalization certificate for your dad, but we do have an index card. And they said if I would be interested, and I said yes. And on the email, they explained what was on this index card, and God is so good. On this index card was actually the date he was registered, his full name when he was registered, and his certificate number. How interesting is that? Remember, all documents prior to 1986 were all destroyed. So this was just reserved for me at that right time. When I took this piece of paper, so this is just a little piece of paper now to prove my dad was British, just an email just to prove. When I took it to the Home Office at the time, they said that they're walking. They said, okay, well, we did find him on the system, and this does confirm that your father was a British citizen. But the rule said your dad had to be British prior to your birth. My father became a full citizen in 1982, and I was born 1988, so 6 years after. So if it was anything before, and you will find out in the rest of the story what would have happened. And I'm saying, wow, this is quite good. So, in everything, you're seeing some doors open, so you didn't think no trouble will ever come. Well, this was just the beginning of pure problems. And so, after gathering all the information, remember I said there was no law that could accommodate me at the time for me to get my citizenship. But I was declaring that God can change the law. So remember, there's a scripture that says life and death lies in the power of the tongue, and our words of life. And I kept calling around to different law firms if anyone knew if there was any possibility of any laws being changed. Time is running down, going, and there's nothing. My visa would have expired April 2015. By January, February, March, April, about March, nothing as yet. On the 6th of April, I went online out of curiosity to went on the Home Office immigration rules. I saw that there was this new law. This law now stated that whether your mother or father was married, you can automatically claim or register as a British citizen. Remember, this law didn't exist in in 2014. By April 2015, this law changed that gave me now a gateway that I would be able to be registered as a British citizen, because it didn't exist in January, February, March, but on the 6th of April, the law changed, and it was changed 7 days before my visa expired. And anyways, I was saying, my God, you're so awesome. And this was just like, to me, was a starting point of my faith story, because no, it was what I would have to hold on to for the things that were coming ahead. Is that God had to use this particular thing to build my faith for the journey or for the years of trouble that was literally coming. So all the green lights were showing. The laws changed now, and I found out that this law was written from 9 years ago, and it only came in effect that April 2015. So 9 years was in House of Parliament, never come in effect until that time. And I saw that this has been God along the way. Anyways, I found out once again that my father's name had to be on my birth paper. That's one of the proof that the Home Office had to verify that I was actually his daughter. And when I checked my birth certificate, unfortunately, my father's name wasn't written, because back in Jamaica or in most countries that the father had to be present at the time of the birth. And if the father wasn't there, then automatically he can't go on the name, and it has to be registered at least 1 year after the child was born. So the other option was a court order. So some people out there right now probably wondering what are the options of getting their child name on their birth paper. One of the options is getting a court order in the country that you're from and having the Registrar General go through that process. More details can be discussed via email if you wish. And so I had to get this court order thing done. And I thought it would have been a very easy process, but this was one of the most complicated things I've ever done. And because my father had died, and because there were so much errors with his documents, like his death certificate had a lot of errors. And so when my mom was in Jamaica who had to do the application on my behalf. She had to go there, present the death certificate. She had to present all the different paperwork that was required to have the name changed, actually added to the paper. When the process was finally completed, the Registrar General in Jamaica actually made a mistake. Now, the missed off is middle name of my birth paper. To my knowledge, I thought, well, that's no big deal. But in legal aspect, that's a very, very big deal. So when I send off my application for my dad when I sent off my application to be registered as a British citizen, initially they refused it. And they refused it on the grounds that, well, we do agree that this man, Ralston Easton Howell Fletcher, which is my dad, is a British, but what's on your birth paper doesn't match his name on his naturalization certificate. So on that basis, we cannot grant you your citizenship because of the middle name. Oftentimes, and the reality is, we take these things for granted, not thinking the significance of certain little things, like we miss a letter out of our name, we just bypass it. But these things unfortunately come back to haunt us sometime along the way. And I've learned a lot of lessons through this process. And so once again, I had to start the whole thing all over again to get my dad's name corrected on my birth paper. And this is where trouble started. And so, but all through this, I saw God's grace, because when my mother, who was doing it on my behalf, she now had to resubmit the documents. Now they were asking for more paperwork than they had asked for the first time. So what had happened now, they had required her to prove that he had these 4 names, which was Ralston Easton Harold Fletcher, because his death certificate only had 3 names, Ralston Harold Fletcher, sorry. And so they said that the death certificate needed to be corrected. So now, not only I'm trying to fix my birth paper, now I have to figure out how to change my father's death certificate. And I had to now contact the Registrar General over here in the UK. Now the Registrar General over in the UK is now asking me, okay, we need for you to provide documents like 3 or 4 years prior to his death. And I'm saying, this man died 20 years ago. Where am I going to get these evidence from? I submitted it by faith with the little I have. They refused it. But the Lord just inspired me to call them via phone. So I called them over the phone and said, well, my father had passed away. The only documents I have with my father is just a photocopy of his naturalization paper, where the National Archive gave me, and the death certificate. And she said, what did you say? I said, yeah, they just naturalized. She said, okay, then hold a minute. I'm not the caseworker, but I can let you speak. I'll see what I can do. She went on hold and she came back and said, well, the best we can do, we can put it at the bottom of the death certificate that he was formerly known with all 4 names. I said, wow, thank you, Jesus, once again. And this is what happens, that sometimes we allow negative response to prevent us from moving forward. Because if I just allowed what she had told me the first time and say, oh, I'm sorry, it can't be done, then I would just accepted it. But sometimes you have to be very persistent, and this journey has really taught me how the key to persistence, and to me that's faith in its own self. And so when I got the death certificate corrected, I sent it back to Jamaica. Now, in Jamaica, they were requesting my father's birth certificate. So first, they wanted a death certificate corrected. That was done. Now they're saying, oh, we can't change the name on your birth paper anymore. We need your father's birth paper. Went to the Registrar General now in Jamaica, asking what's the procedures of having my father's, getting a copy of my father's birth paper. They give us this long list of information. Oh, I need to get evidence from my father was in primary school. Like, seriously, my father would have been about 80 something now if he was still alive. So I must go back 50 years in history to find out where my father went to school, where he was christened. So all this long list, and these things are so impractical for people. And eventually my mom paid for them to do an advanced search. Only to find out now, when they did the search, my father's name on his birth paper was actually Easton Harold. So that's just 2 names. So apparently his first name and last name was missing. And I found out after is that in the law back in those days would have registered the child's first name, and once they have the same dad, they didn't put the surname on the paper. And I think this is a new method that they're doing in Jamaica at the moment, where they eliminate the surname once the parents were married and had the same surname. So when my mom took that back to the court, this birth paper was non-effective because all the names were matching and the names were consistent anymore. And I'm saying, my God, this is just too much, because every single time we had to present a different document. Mom had to keep going to the court over and over and over again. And this thing was going on for nearly a year, no changes. It was only getting worse. And it's like the more evidence we provided, it's just more intense, and the worse the situation got. And I remember the last time, I think this was around 2016 now, they said that she should come back to court another day. And when she went back to court with the same documents, and my mom said she just don't know what happened, but the Lord just spoke to her. And she just started to speak to the judge and tell the judge the situation that I'm in here and then why I need this document and so forth. The judge told her to just come back within 1 hour's time or so forth. My mom and mom went to pray, and I started praying, and I said, God, if this is not the way you want me to go, just let everything just stop right now, because I really don't have the energy, I don't have the strength, I can't fight this thing anymore. This is it. If this thing is not granted in the court for my name to be on the birth paper, it ends there, and I'm just going right back home. I just can't deal with it anymore. I think when you reach a point where you're just sick and tired of being sick and tired, I think I was at that point. And when mom went in, because mom said prior to her telling her to come back 1 hour time, she was so intense, she just wanted her to have all the documents. When mom went in now, so this is after a year of journey, just the judge turned to my mom and said, Miss Diana Kins, I'm so happy. I'm going to grant you this document, and your daughter's father's name, full name will be added to the birth paper. And I'm telling you, that was just one chapter being closed of this drama. And I finally got that birth paper with the correct name. And so that was one part of my story being closed at that moment. But what I was doing in the process of getting my British citizenship now, I was also making another application through my husband. So if that one didn't go through well, I had kind of a backup plan to some extent. And so when I made an application through my husband, who is a British citizen now, to say, okay, they refuse it as well. So now, not only one application is being refused, that's 2 applications being refused. And when the application is being processed in that situation, you can't do nothing. It's like you're literally held hostage. But in the sense that the good thing about it, at no point I was ever illegal. So let me just make that clear, because I always was on a valid visa, because I always made my applications prior to any visa being expired. And I think that is one of the key things to do with any immigration matter. Just make sure that you have a valid visa in your passport before you make an application while you decide to remain in the UK. And so when I made the application to my husband, they refused it. That, well, you have lived most of your life in Jamaica, and this is a story that many people who are here, who are family, and majority of the family live here, they're saying, oh, you spend most of your time in your home country. There's nothing wrong for you to go back home. Just go back to your country and start your life as you normally did. And so had to go to the court. Went to the court. I decided to represent myself, because I had a solicitor, and that solicitor was just not, and I won't even mention it here. But yeah, so I decided, you know what, I'm gonna go to court on my own. So I got all my evidence that I would need to represent my case. Went in, I was shaking like a leaf, because now I'm facing the Home Office guy who refused my application and the judge. And I said, God, I remember this scripture said, be still and know that I am God. And I was having some dreams regarding the situation. And so this is the case regarding my husband and I. And I went to court that day, and I remember being interrogated by the Home Office and so forth. And they did the same thing to my husband and another family friend that came. And they were asking so much questions, why should you stay here? Why should you allow? They treat you like you're a criminal. I mean, anybody who comes into another foreign country, a first world country, the truth of the matter, they only come to better their life. They don't want to do nothing. And it's sad to say they even work much harder than those who actually live in this country. And this is not even being politically correct in any way. And I'm saying that, so she said that, why should you stay here? Who do you have back home? And just a long whole process. And I remember the guy was saying, well, your husband can pack up and go back to his country. And this is a British citizen. They are telling, okay, go back to your country. You spent almost 16 years paying taxes and contributing to this society. And he's telling, oh, go back home to your wife. Go back home to Jamaica with your wife if your wife can't stay here. And you pack up and leave your other kids. They don't really care. And there's this law that claims that this humanitarian rights, that's Article 8 in the immigration, that says everyone has a right to their family. So my question is, what right does this apply to, and what family do you guys mention? Because there are so many people who have family here, and when they do send their application to you, to the Home Office, you guys rip it to bits and tell them to go back home because they don't have a substantial family life in the UK. So I really think that law needs to be really corrected or really applied directly of what family law is, or what is family life in the UK. And they gave me my opportunity to speak, and I said my bit. And the Lord just gave me this boldness, and I spoke. And I remember leaving the courtroom in tears because I'm like, wow, this is it. And I remember the Home Office guy came to me and said, don't worry about it. You don't worry. I was only doing my job. I think you should go and study law. You're trying to butter me up. And I said, you know what? I'll leave it in God's hands. And they were meant to make a decision within 30 days after that appeal. Didn't hear anything from them, but I'm the kind of person who loves to follow up on things. So when I didn't hear from them within that 30 days, I said something isn't right. So I remember calling the court and said, well, I had a case hearing on this day and I haven't heard anything. And she was saying, didn't you hear? I said, no, I haven't heard. We send your documents to your solicitor. I said, well, I don't have a solicitor, so how can you send it to a solicitor? And she said, well, there's a solicitor. And I said, no, I wrote to you guys and said that this man is no longer representing me. Only to my surprise, they had sent my documents back to the same guy. He didn't contact me and let me know that he had received anything from them. No, they had refused the whole thing. They had dismissed the case. And I had a certain amount of time left, not knowing that the time that they have made the decision to the time I found out, my time was outside the appeal date. So this could literally put me in a situation that I could have been deported or been held in detention because my documents were sent off and I didn't even know. And the solicitor had my paperwork, never contacted me, and this was a negligence of the court. And so I had to immediately find another lawyer at this point. I had to get a lawyer because now I had for him to make an outside appeal regarding the decision that was made. And he was saying, no, Malissa, I don't think this is going to work. It's like, I felt like I was at the point where no one literally believed in me. And I think, as I said earlier, when the law was changed, I think that was my bit of faith that I held on to say, but if God could change this law that didn't exist, then everything else is possible, because it just felt like everything that was begin to crumble down, like nothing was working. And if the solicitor is telling you this is like a doom case, much less you have no knowledge of law, but then your knowledge of law or your faith in God outweigh the law, but then there's a battle in your mind with your faith. Because then you begin to question that if you really hear that from God, or you begin to question if this thing is for real. And there's so much level of frustration in the whole thing that you just kind of just mentally want to give up on everything else. And he was like, this solicitor was like, oh no, this is not happening, it won't work, and blah blah blah. So I said, okay, just do it anyway. If you don't believe it's gonna work, just do it. Just do it just to buy time. And he did it. Within about a month or two after, he came back and said, oh, Melissa, good news. Yes, I got your appeal was allowed and you're going back to the court. So now, I have to go back to the upper tribunal. This is now a high court. But funny enough, my mom had a dream maybe a year prior to that date, about me going in court and what she had saw. And I remember she telling me the details of that dream, and I saw the whole thing play out on the day I went back to court. And I remember going to court that day, and I was at that point there was so much different aspects of our life that was going. I was in church still active, still doing what I was supposed to be doing spiritually. So despite how I was feeling, I still was spiritually keeping my head above the waters. But at this point now, there was so much different elements that was going wrong in our life, because now we had moved from one house trying to get another house, and then the house that we were meant to get at last minute, it didn't happen. So now we literally had to be living in a hotel for a few days. And at the same day we were living in at a hotel, I had to go to court. And I remember traveling on the train, and Rory's, my husband, said to me, "Why are you not bothered?" I said, "I don't know." I said, I think I was just singing this song, "I will be still, I know that He's God." And I guess I became so numb to the situation at that point. I think that was around 2017. And I remember going to court that day. Now I'm going to the upper tribunal. This is the big court. And I went there. I remember meeting the barrister, because no, a normal solicitor can't represent you. You had to get a higher level lawyer. And he was saying to me, well, he doesn't believe that you'll win this case. It's probably going to go back to the first court. And I said, "God, this thing can't go back to another court. It's just too much. It's too much, Lord. I can't deal with that anymore." But I didn't say it to him, but I said it in my own self. And I was saying, "God, I don't think you're going to allow that to happen." And I remember sitting down in that courtroom, and my barrister, he didn't really have to say anything, because it was like the God just had a divine favor, because the judge was like my own representative. They were like the one who were speaking the case into reality to the Home Office guy, and the Home Office guy was agreeing with all that it was saying. I'm like, am I really in a courtroom regarding my immigration case? Because the way that the Lord just flipped it around. And I sat there and I just started praying in my own self. And I said, "God, you did it once, you can do it again." And within about 20 minutes, the case was over, and the judge said, "Well, your case is allowed." I said, "My case is allowed?" So I said to the barrister, "What does he mean?" I knew what it meant. While asking him, he said, it was like the barrister was dumbstruck, because he was saying I would never win the case. And he said, "You won your case." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yes." And the barrister turned around and said, "In all my life of going to that particular judge, I have never won a case with him." So I was the first, but you see, God, I didn't win my case. God won my case. And when that happened, I said, "Whoa, God, you're just amazing." And I'm just trying to cut the story very short, because there's so much different parts to it. Anyway, so that was the case with my husband. Now, the one with my dad, the British citizenship, is still ongoing. Anyways, no solicitors didn't want to pursue the one with my citizenship. No one believed I would ever get through with it. So I decided to continue on my own. And none of them didn't know aware of the laws anyway. So I decided the Lord allowed me to continue on my own. So I made the application to appeal the original decision that they made. And I sent off a letter, and I said, "God, you write this letter, because I don't know how to write it or word it." And I'm telling you, God just kept downloading stuff in my brain to write on that piece of paper. And he liked to open my eyes to some of the errors and the mistake that the Home Office guys had made. And I've never studied law, I've never done law, but God is the master of law. He created law, so whose wisdom is divine over anyone else? And he was just putting things in my brain to write, and I was writing it down. And I signed 5 pages off to them. And when I sent it off to them, I didn't hear anything from them within 6 months. Within 6 months, they only sent me a letter that they have received it, and they're reviewing my case still. Anyways, in the process of that, my birth certificate had come through with the correct name, so I was able to send it off to them, plus with the court order as well. And I remember calling them on the 9th month, because this is like 2017 now, so this started from 2014. 2017 now, I've called them and they said, well, it's still being processed. So I said, how long you guys expect people to sit down and wait for you to make a decision? I don't know if I was a bit rude, but I was like, you can't just put people's life on hold for such a long period of time. And anyways, I decided to continue pursuing them. So one day now, I was at church. So God had to, God is so dramatic. He has to make things so explosive. One day I was at church and I was staying at a church sister house for a while, so I had my meals redirected to that address. She came to church and she gave me a grey envelope. I knew exactly what it was because only the Home Office send people with grey envelopes. And I said, Lord, should I put this here? Because this was testimony service going on. I was like, God, should I put this here? Or should I wait till I go home? And I sat in the corner of church and I ripped the bag to pieces. And I took out the thing and I realized it was my documents that I sent out for my British citizenship. And this was around February 2018 now. And when I look on the cover letter they said to me, you don't have to resend us any more document as your application for registration as British citizenship is now successful. You receive further information to go and do your British ceremony, and we have also refunded you your money. So you only need to pay. The only difference will be sent back to me, and the difference will go towards the ceremony. I'm like, oh my God, is this for real? Is this really, really, really real? I don't know if you ever had the experience that you waited for something so long to the point that you didn't think it would be even possible. I used to look for the post every single day to see that letter coming, and it seemed as if every other letter would come except that one. And when this one finally came, I'm like, oh my God. And I was just rejoicing. And it was testimony time in church. And I remember getting up and sharing my testimony. I don't think anyone really understood what I was trying to express because they don't really understand the process and the journey, the rejections, the no's, the court. So much frustration. And being in that situation is somewhat of a taboo thing in church. There are a lot of people going through this situation and they really don't tell anybody because people look down on you, people make you feel so bad regarding these things. But I did say, God, when this day came, I will share my testimony because this is nothing to do with me. This is all your glory, because in a million years I would have never thought I would have come in this country as a visitor and remain as a British citizen. And you know what God did? To become a British citizen by normal route, if I went back to Jamaica, did the 2.5 years, come back, I had to spend 10 years in this country before I could be qualified as a British. So even though my 3 years was intense pain, it cut down 7 years. It saved me 7 years of money that I would have to spend to the Home Office. It saved me 7 years of frustration, probably I had to deal with them, and the laws being changing. So it intensified the pressure within 3 years, and I was able to be granted my citizenship. Not only did God did that for me, within 2 weeks, in the January of the same 2018, my other paper came through with my husband. So I was also granted my stay. So I had to send that back to them, back to the Home Office, and said, well, it's no longer needed because now I'm a citizen. Because they have granted me 2.5 years, but I had a British citizenship now. So the citizenship override what they had initially granted. So both things came in 2018 within the same period of time. And I look back and I said, my God, I think this thing has really just been a humbling journey for me. It makes me, anytime I feel doubtful of something else happening in my life, or I feel doubtful because I don't see things going the way I think it should go, I'm just always conscious of this particular situation. I think He used things to build your faith in the process. He just give you something to hold on to, say, okay, remember when I did that? So if I did that thing, then what you're going through is nothing compared to what I can do for you, because that's just another testimony that he's building. And that's how I began this journey when I say in the life of an immigrant. No, he placed me in the field of law. So I'm working in immigration. Who would have, that doesn't even make any sense. This was the farthest thing from my mind. Sales and marketing is what I did and I enjoyed. I never had a desire, never planned to do anything in immigration. So he said all things work together for your good, for them that love the Lord. You see, my life is not mine, it's really his, and he is the writer, he's the creator, he's the author, he's the one that finishes the book. I'm just playing out the chapters as he go along. I'm just his little puppet working for him. And I guess once you put that into full perspective, you realize that nothing that you do in life, well, as a believer, all things that you do is really to glorify God. And even if it has to take you through some intense things, he has to get the glory in the end. And sometimes you learn that there are certain things within you that needs to change, and this situation is what changed you. Even for me, not that I was never a humble person, but I have a heart of gratitude for things and for people and for life itself. Maybe I wouldn't have had it if I had not been through these things. And in final closing words, because I don't think I can say anything much longer, I just want to encourage somebody out there who is going through this really, really rough time. Maybe you feel hopeless in your situation right now, whether it's immigration or anything else. And as a believer or a non-believer, God is in the midst of everything. When you don't understand it, he knows the end from the beginning. Or is it the right way around? He knows the beginning from the end. And when you worry, you kind of automatically reduce your faith level, because now you're taking it from his hand and then putting it back in your hands. And if you have had experiences with him before, then you should know that he's going to work things out for you once again, despite how long or hard or painful it may seem. And if anyone needs any form of support, I'm not giving any legal advice. You can just send me a message via my email, which will be shown on this video, and I'll be able to guide you whenever way I can. But just remember that God he's awesome and he's always worthy to be praised, and every situation that you go through is for him to get the glory, not yourself. And don't let anyone let you feel inferior to your situation. People can just label you according to your situation, and then you can subconsciously begin to believe that. And I think what the enemy wants to do is keep us a prisoner to a situation that you become mentally tormented by. And when you're mentally tormented by a situation, you can't fully function effectively as you should be, and somehow it just brings out a different personality. Because I even remember there were some times when I was so low, I think my kids could experience my low periods, which shouldn't be, because now I'm allowing the situation to consume me more than me being an overcomer in that situation. So in a nutshell, be encouraged. God has the final say. It's not your will but his will be done. God bless you.